Jared, we'd like to thank you for being with us here at the Launchpad today. We know you're super busy, so we'll get kind of straight to it. You're obviously a very successful entrepreneur and adventurer, and have had the ball thrown your way many times. Can you tell us a bit about some of the adventures you've had previously, but this new big adventure you're embarking on today?
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me on. Obviously, I love talking about Inspiration4 and everything we hope to accomplish with this really awesome mission. In terms of some of past adventures, I've been a space geek, aviation enthusiast for as long as I can remember. Really since I was 5 years old, I remember looking at the space shuttle in awe. I started flying in 2004. I've done a number of, really been lucky to fly a number of really incredible aircraft. I did a couple world record flights to also benefit a really nice charity in 2008 and 9. Wound up flying on the air show circuit for a couple of years, which was really incredible, 18 inches apart from another airplane, doing loops and rolls, which was fun. And that also was to benefit a great charity. When not the non-flying adventures, which even involved a little bit of flying, was went to Antarctica last year for a really cool mountain climb expedition. We landed on the ice runway at Union Glacier, so that was cool. And now we're just getting warmed up for the next great aerial adventure. It's going to be a little bit out of this world, which is Inspiration4, and it's the first all-civilian mission to space, and it'll launch later this year.
It's incredible. I didn't think it'd be something we'd see coming into 2021, but it is, and I think it's a big beacon of hope to many people for it. So what inspired you to come up with this idea? How did you get SpaceX on board? What's it like working with Elon? I know he's always game for big adventures, so what's that like?
Well, I've been knocking on their door for a really long time. Maybe 12, 13 years. I mean, like a lot of you, I've been watching at a distance, and Elon and the SpaceX team are doing the whole commercial space in the whole. Just got to admire their foresight 20 years ago to set this world on this journey. They've achieved so much, self-landing rockets. I mean, I totally, believe they've inspired, the entire world, reinvigorated the world's interest in space exploration. But anyway, as part of my persistence and knocking on the door, I've always kind of signaled my interest and willingness to want to go on this type of an adventure. And they've obviously had a lot of other, important things to do along the way. But very recently, and actually we're talking just a handful of months ago, the opportunity presented itself, and I jumped on it. And what I didn't know is that it would be the first. And in any first, that has this kind of significance, you just have to be really thoughtful about what the mission is going to represent. So in this case, we're trying to put a lot of thought into who the crew members will be, and the message they will send to the world, and how they will deliver inspiration both in space and here on Earth. And then obviously the organization that stands to benefit, which we've selected St Jude Children's Research Hospitals, and it's going to be the biggest fundraising endeavor in their entire history, which is pretty awesome.
So good. It couldn't be going to a better organization, and a better way of bringing kind of the two things together of Earth and space, to help both proceed into the future. Before we dive a bit deeper into the mission, how do people get involved? Just run us through how they can secure or have the chance to secure their seat in the Generosity or the Prosperity seat.
Yeah, so and thanks for bringing it up. I happen to think the crew selection process is one of the coolest parts of this whole mission, in that we are making it available to everyday people. The 4 crew members, as there's only 4 people that can fit in the Dragon spacecraft, will represent mission pillars of leadership, hope, generosity, and prosperity. And I'll be occupying the leadership position, and we have another crew member that we've selected, although we're keeping her name a secret for now. She's a frontline healthcare worker that works at St Jude, actually a childhood cancer survivor herself, was treated at St Jude, and she will occupy the seat reserved for Hope. But there are 2 other crew member seats that are available really to the public. And the way you get involved is you go to the Inspiration4.com mission website, and you can make a donation. You make a donation to a really incredible cause, which is St Jude Children's Research Hospital. And at the end of the month, through a random selection process, we're going to pick a seat member that will represent the mission, pillar, and spirit of generosity. And then the last crew member seat is being reserved for an entrepreneur. And the way you get involved is the same as the generosity seat, which is you go to the Inspiration4 mission website, inspiration4.com. And you follow the link to the Shift4 Shop e-commerce platform, and you make a web page. And then you record a video and you share it on social media, and you tell the world about your business idea and why it should be elevated to the stars and how you're going to make a difference. And then through an independently judged competition, we will select the fourth and final crew member who will represent the mission pillar of prosperity. And that will be Inspiration4.
Such a different process than what we saw with Shuttle and even Crew Dragon currently. But amazing that it's, going to the stars and going to orbit now isn't an idea that's generations away. It's hopefully this year, as everything's going to plan. How do you feel about being one of the four that's going to take that next step of making space accessible for civilians? Do you see yourself as a trailblazer of civilian flight to that next level of space, like we've seen different generations with powered flight, transatlantic?
Oh, I'm just really lucky to be here. The pioneers are everyone around here at SpaceX and NASA who've made all this possible. How about the generation of astronauts and the team that supported them before? We're truly standing on the shoulders of giants. But in terms of my role with this mission as mission commander, I just think it's an immense responsibility, because I do believe that we are all going to live in a world someday where everybody can journey among the stars. There will be a lunar and Martian base, and there will be a family bouncing around on the lunar surface one day, and their kids will be in little mini spacesuits and such. But in order for that to happen, we gotta solve some of the challenges that exist here on Earth too, and that's where St Jude comes into play. But we also have to execute flawlessly on our mission coming up later this year, because if something doesn't go as planned in that, all it's going to do is slip the timeline for everyone else to the right, and we don't want that to happen. I think that's a pretty important responsibility.
You kind of touched on it, but there's various opinions of why are we spending so much going to space, trying to get into orbit, the moon and Mars, and then others that see, we got to go there because by going there, we're also going to be advancing here. Did you do it intentionally, bringing these two varying opinions together to try to help both go forward? And what would you say to those people that are saying, we should be focusing here first?
Yeah, so it was very intentional, and it's not unique to the Inspiration4 mission, whether it was the world record flights I did in the past or the air shows. I mean, you want to inspire individuals as to what's possible. You want to advance society and humankind, because that will make the world a better place. But there is also an obligation to deal with some of the problems that impact the Earth today. And I can't think of a more important one that we need to solve than childhood cancer, and that's where St. Jude comes into play. But look, we can look throughout all of history, right? And there has been hardship and suffering in the world from the beginning of time. And that didn't stop progress. I mean, geez, I think of like the Manhattan Project. I mean, one of the biggest, if not the biggest defense expenditures during World War II. And look at what's come from that. I mean, all of modern nuclear medicine can trace its roots to that program. Think about all the lives that have been saved, whether it's from the treatment itself or from diagnostic capabilities that came from that project. So a lot of good can come from these type of things as we progress forward.
It's great having that perspective of looking back and really knowing that history. We just had the anniversaries of Challenger and Columbia, and I think it was really special seeing space has come so much back into the forefront of people's minds that you saw a lot more people recognizing those dates and celebrating the history that they set for us to be able to keep going forward. You kind of talked about it a bit, but you've worked with so many organizations over the years. Why St. Jude? Have you been involved with them before? Why them for this special mission?
Yeah, and even just to add on Apollo 1 also, which
Yes.
it's this is definitely not the best time period in terms of some of the sacrifices that have happened along with the space program. But again, we are standing on the shoulders of giants. They have propelled us forward. And in terms of St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, so my company, Shift4 Payments, we've had a relationship with St. Jude for nearly 2 decades now. Why I think they're important to me, because I know how lucky I've been in life, and I know that the ball has bounced my way many times. And there are a lot of families out there and their children that are enduring heartbreaking hardships right now. It's super sad. and a lot of them won't have the opportunity to grow up and experience anything like that I have in life, and that's it's terrible. It's a total tragedy, right? So we've got to do something about it, and that's why I've prioritized St. Jude Children's Research Hospital over the last 2 decades, and that's why it's going to be the complete beneficiary for all the charitable efforts that we're going to do as part of Inspiration4.
Yeah, it's been amazing hearing from them since the announcement of just them knowing, the goal is 200 million. You've signed the first check yourself for the 100 million on top of covering this mission. And just hearing them with the optimism of they are not going to have to say no to anyone. They're going to be able to cover everything they need is so important. And I think reflecting back on 2020 and 2021, really not being years any of us would have planned to have in our life. On a bit more of a personal note, how has COVID affected you? How have you been getting through it? Have you been touched directly by the pandemic in any way?
So this has been really an unimaginable year. I mean, my company, which I started when I was 16 years old, we're a payment processing organization for about 33% of the hotels and restaurants in the United States. So, talk about an industry that's been, just decimated by the COVID pandemic. So that's been really hard on a lot of our customers, and our customers are our friends, their relationships. There's a lot of people in our organization that work and support them. So we've tried to do a lot to help out those industries. We launched Shift4 Cares, right after, really right at when lockdowns first happened in mid-March. And we've tried to help as much as we can with these industries using new technology, whether it's QR codes or contactless payments, online ordering, to help them persevere until, the storm passes. And I think fortunately we are, getting close to that point. We just need to get a lot more shots in the arms. And of course, I think we all know people who've been impacted by the disease themselves, the virus. We know people who've passed because of it as well. It's pretty tragic. It really is.
What got you first interested in space? Were you that kid dreaming of seeing our beautiful planet from orbit or on the moon, or was it later in life that you kind of discovered space?
No, right from the beginning. Right from the beginning. I mean, 5 years old, elementary school, looking at picture books of the space shuttle. I mean, I watched that '80s movie Space Camp when I was a kid. I wound up going to Aviation Challenge actually later on as a kid, which was like the fighter pilot version of Space Camp. But yeah, I've always been a space enthusiast, really, and I had hoped and dreamed that at some point I would get the opportunity to go up. Never could have imagined, to represent the first civilian mission to space. But it's a super privilege. Really excited.
Space Camp, probably one of the best movies just to get kids hyped about space, or even adults. It's still a good movie.
Absolutely.
Elon has said that we haven't perfected space travel yet, though they are close to zero for just the safety of having issues. How do you assess the risk of launching into space? Do you have any concerns with SpaceX's track record? We've seen Starship, a new vehicle, obviously being tested, but the Crew Dragon seems pretty proven.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think it's very important for those that aren't, super familiar with what they're doing at SpaceX and the various programs. Please don't confuse Starship, which is, in its developmental stage as a space launch system, to Falcon 9 and Dragon, which are very much proven. Immense confidence in the technology and what they've pioneered here. I mean, they're landing rockets on ships. They're doing what people said weren't possible. We've all seen the videos. This isn't a dream. This is reality now. Not to mention, they don't self-certify their rockets for flight. NASA certified and human-rated the Falcon 9 and Dragon launch vehicle system. So that's 60 years of lessons learned and experiences that NASA brought, to the certification process of this vehicle. So really, really confident. Obviously, also been, briefed on the entire training plan for myself and the rest of the crew members throughout the rest of this year. I know we're going to be totally prepared. And then honestly, you do, a comparison to some of the other, aviation activities that I've had in life, even just being in Antarctica last year on Mount Vincent. I mean, if I got appendicitis there, I think that's a far bigger problem getting to a place that can help than being up in orbit on Dragon, or I mean, when I flew air shows, we flew, 7-ship jet formation, 18 inches of wing overlap, 10 feet off the ground. The risk profile of that was on an order of magnitude greater than riding Dragon up in orbit.
Which is amazing that it is, that we're at that point with science and space travel. As you said, you've got thousands of hours under your wings as a pilot. What's training like for you? What's it going to be like for the 3 civilians that have never touched anything space travel?
Right. Well, there's a lot of it that we're doing together. So there's going to be just tons of simulator time, normal procedures, abnormal procedures, actually very, almost aviation standard in that regard, right? You got to get comfortable for everything that as it's supposed to be. And then you plan for all the things that shouldn't happen. So that's a big part of the training. We'll do that as a team. There's going to be some water survival training that we're going to go through. All sorts of emergency procedures, pad, safety training. There's some, pretty interesting zip lines I think we're going to get some exposure to down at Kennedy Space Center. A lot of academics and systems training for sure on orbital mechanics. We have to understand what's going on around us as we're operating in space. And then, some of the training that'll be a little bit more specific to the role for me is obviously, the operation of Dragon. Everything goes well. It's no different than, a 747 flight here, in the US. The vast majority of the trip is essentially autopilot, right? But my 6,000, jet flight hours, most of the training came down to about 6 hours of it. And those are the things you don't expect that you need to be well prepared for. And that's going to be a big part of, at least my training as we go ahead.
We know that the Crew Dragon capsule is pretty much fully automated. But with your background, do you want to take control of it? Do you plan on being the first civilian to fly a spacecraft and just tick another box on the bucket list?
Yeah, I think with my background, any pilot would say that operating, the Dragon spacecraft, could be the pinnacle of their aviation career. I'm no different in that regard. I'll certainly be trained on how to manually operate, the spacecraft. I've already actually had a chance to play around a little bit in the simulator with it. If everything goes right and there's no need to have manual control, then no reason to mess with what's working. No need to introduce any unnecessary risk into the mission profile. But if circumstances come up where the safe thing to do is to take control of the spacecraft, I'll certainly have the right training to do it.
A couple questions from some of our followers for it. Do you know if you're going to be in a new or previously flown Dragon capsule? Do you have name ideas, or is that something you're waiting for the crew to decide, or is it kind of going to be just like the mission where we open it up to the world to be part of the naming?
Well, we are aware of which Dragon we will be leaving this Earth on, and right now it has a name. It's got a proud name, and it deserves to keep that name until she comes back and brings her crew back to Earth. But at some point in the future, I'm sure that she'll proudly wear her new name, and we'll cross that bridge at the time.
Amazing. Focusing back a bit on the mission and how people can be involved, what would you say to people considering getting involved with this, or those that are a little bit hesitant in it? What would you just tell people and encourage them with?
Well, look, you don't have to go to Inspiration4's website and make a donation and want to go to space. You can also just make a donation to support what is a really important cause. I mean, I think that's what the best part about Inspiration4 is. Why we named it Inspiration4 is we're trying to inspire, the world as to infinite number of possibilities, what we can do up in space for sure, but also what we can accomplish down here on Earth. I mean, you look at the crew members, the crew member who occupy the seat of hope. She's a great individual, and I hope she inspires a lot of people as to some of life's most unfortunate, situations like childhood cancer, and that you can beat it, and that you can go on and you can make a difference in other people's lives as a healthcare worker, right? That's That's a way, that's an inspiring message that I think people can certainly relate to. But you're also going to have an everyday person, who just makes a donation, and again, 30 days from now will get fitted in a spacesuit. And then you have somebody else who maybe was on the fence about whether or not they wanted to start a business, and Inspiration4 gave them that last bit of courage to go on and create a website and tell the world about it, and they could wind up going to space. But I suspect there's going to be a pretty big audience that's going to pay attention to the 4 crew members of Inspiration4, and hopefully they're inspired to do all sorts of interesting things in life, and it just doesn't have to always be out in space.
With the expertise that you're going to have on board from all the different experiences, are you planning to do some sort of like educational sessions? We know you're probably going to be up for about 4, maybe 5 days. What are we kind of expecting for what we can see during those days in orbit? Obviously still early in the planning, but
yeah, it is early. We are going to release the full mission details, in the weeks ahead. We are doing our design review, initial mission kickoffs. We've actually had a few meetings already on that, but there's more to work out, and then we'll share that with the world. But we are going to stay busy up there. We've already reached out, not just to St Jude, but a number of healthcare organizations, some educational institutions. Basically said, give us your ideas on payload and experiments, because it's a long wait list, and it's very costly to get any weight in orbit. And kind of in furtherance of our mission objectives and Inspiration4 to try and do as much good on Earth, we want to take up various experiments and payload to help to help a lot of worthwhile causes out. So there's a pretty long list. We're going through it now, and we will share details in the near future.
So Inspiration4 is really paving the way and taking those next steps in commercializing and opening space for all of us, but also keeping that reminder that we need to take care of our home and our friends and family as well. As we wrap up, either with space or just in life and business, what wisdom or encouragement would you just give everyone, as we navigate this time of the pandemic and looking forward for a hopeful future?
Well, sure. Well, how about, and forgive me for bringing it back to space, but I'd say if you look at history, some of these, interesting first steps, it's amazing what follows and how quickly it can follow. So, if you go back to, Orville and Wilbur Wright at Kitty Hawk, by aviation standards, that first powered flight was not very interesting, right? Not the most impressive. But 20 years later, you have the first airplane ambulances that are helping save lives, or you go to Charles Lindbergh's solo flight across the Atlantic, right? One individual, gets to fly across the Atlantic Ocean. But 12 years later, Pan Am established the first transatlantic commercial service. So, Inspiration4 might be 4 to start. But there's an awful lot that's going to follow, and I suspect people won't have to wait very long. I do think we're going to live in that really, interesting world where people are hopping into their rocket ships like the Jetsons someday, and we owe a lot of it to the foresight of Elon and the team at SpaceX for making it possible.
So space was a big goal in life. I know we're still got a ways to go for it, but what's next? Once you check that box of going to space, is the moon next for you, or just focusing on the mission for now?
Yeah, you got it. We got to focus on executing on this mission first, right? We're taking everything in milestones. Right now, we've got a crew selection process we need to get through in the month of February. We've got this fundraising record we got to shatter, and then we're going to get to training, and then we're going to launch to space, and we're going to come safely back, and then we'll think about what comes next.
Absolutely. Well, Jared, thank you so much for your time. It's truly been a privilege getting to connect with you. I wish you and your crew, when they're selected, every success in this mission, and we'd love to invite you and them back, maybe prior to the launch, and get some insights from them as Inspiration4 really starts to get its everything together to get ready for liftoff later this year. Thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. We're looking forward to it. Yeah, please extend that invite. We'd love to come back and talk more about Inspiration4.
Thank you, Jared.
Thanks. Take care.
Twinkle, twinkle, little star.
This fall, Inspiration4 launches as the first all-civilian mission to space. And you could be on board.
Up above the world so
Visit Inspiration4.com for your chance to go to space.